Hello, and thank you for joining my lecture recital today. I'm Ian McIntyre, and today I will be providing a brief introduction to electroacoustic music, more specifically, how to get started with live looping. This lecture recital stems from the research I did during my doctoral treatise at Florida State University. The presentation today is to briefly introduce the tools and how to approach electroacoustic music. I will quickly touch on some history and the most common styles of electroacoustic music. And then we will dive into the tools and the equipment that is needed when approaching live looping and electroacoustic music. I will also briefly discuss some sound effects that are prevalent in electroacoustic music. Now this is going to be a very quick overview of some key topics to simply serve as an introduction. From there, I will go into more detail on beginning to work with live computer processing and live looping. Then, I will conclude with a demonstration of an etude I wrote for clarinet and live looping. So what is electroacoustic music? Electroacoustic music combines electronics and acoustic instruments, such as a clarinet, into a musical setting. One of the early pioneers of this style of music was William O. Smith, and he wrote several important pieces for the repertoire. In 1960, he wrote Duo for Clarinet and Tape, which was a fixed media piece, which we'll talk about in just a second. And then in 1980, he wrote a solo for clarinet and delay system. In 1985, he wrote Asana for clarinet electronics, which incorporated live processing. There are several styles of electroacoustic music. Fixed media is the first we'll discuss today, and this is where a performer plays alongside a pre-recorded backing track. And this is most common to performing traditional repertoire, where the clarinet acts as a soloist and the fixed media generally acts as an accompaniment. But with this, there's a little bit less flexibility than performing alongside a pianist or another instrumentalist. Because the media is fixed and pre-composed, the performer must conform to playing alongside of the fixed media. The next type is effect pedals, and this is the use of hardware devices to alter the sound. Now this allows for more creative and unique sound possibilities than performing with fixed media. However, it is a bit more expensive because you have to purchase the effect pedals, and you also have to understand what the specific effects do to the sound, so it is a little bit more of a learning curve. And there's also more setup time for this style of electroacoustic music. Live computer processing is another style that we'll be focusing on today. And this is using a computer to process the audio and create effects digitally. With this style of electroacoustic music, you are able to create similar styles and sounds to the hardware effects that you could in option 2, but there's more creative possibilities, and additionally it's also more portable. However, you'll need a quality computer or a laptop, and you'll have to have an understanding of the computer programs, or you'll have to work alongside somebody who does, such as a composer or an audio engineer. But this generally comes with less setup than performing a piece with effect pedals. Let's discuss some of the equipment that you'll need to perform a live processing piece. For performing, you'll need a computer and a digital audio workstation. The majority of electronic music composition today is done in a digital audio workstation, or a DAW. And some notable DAWs are Ableton, Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, and FL Studio. Today, I'll be using Ableton. And if you look over on the right of the slide, you'll see a picture of the interface of Ableton. And you can imagine a DAW is almost like a traditional home studio. You have the capabilities to record, mix, master, add audio effects, and even create software instruments and effects inside the program. Now, Ableton is pretty standard among electroacoustic musicians because of its compatibility with a program called Max MSP. With Max MSP, it allows the user to create software instruments and effects from scratch. And additionally to that, there is a large database of mostly free effects and instruments created by other performers and composers that is readily available for electroacoustic musicians. In addition to a computer and a digital audio workstation, you'll want to also have access to a microphone, an audio interface, and speakers. There are 3 types of microphones we'll discuss today: a contact microphone, a dynamic wired microphone, also known as a stand microphone, and wireless microphone. The microphone I'll be using today is a contact microphone. And as you can see, it's this red part attached to my barrel. And the perk of this is it provides easier setup and less equipment to travel with for the performer. The microphone is easily able to fit inside a case, and it just screws right directly into the barrel. Now with this ease of setup and transportation, there also comes a little bit less quality of sound compared to some of these other microphone options. And depending on the model of microphone, it can be a little bit more expensive than some of these other styles of microphone. Now with a dynamic wired microphone, you have the benefit of being able to place the microphone in the best placement of the hall to get the best sound possible. Now, on the flip side of this, it also requires more setup time and to carry around more equipment. And you also have to understand mic placements and experiment around with those in a sound check. The wireless microphone is kind of a blend between these two, where you can place it onto the instrument, and it also allows for more flexibility of the performer because they can perform and move around more freely as they could not with a dynamic wired microphone because that's stationary. In addition to this, you'll also want an audio interface, and this acts as a bridge between the microphones, any hardware devices that you may be using, and the computer. The microphone cable plugs into the audio interface, and then there's also a USB connection from the audio interface into the computer. Additionally, you'll need speakers to project the electronic elements of the piece. Now, if these are unavailable, you can use a guitar amp, which is less expensive than purchasing your own speaker set and carrying that around, and because it's smaller, it's a lot easier to carry around and more portable. Delay, reverb, and distortion are commonly used effects in electroacoustic music. Delay is a time-based effect where the original signal is played back at a varied time. If you look over on the right, you'll see an image of this effect. Now, the length of time that the delay is set for can be varied within a piece. If you think about a smaller increment, a millisecond or two, that can be used to add some artificial depth to the sound. If you go for a longer time, like an echo, or even something longer like a few seconds, that can be used to create some interesting counterpoint-like effects between the electronics and the performer. Reverb is another time-based effect, but that's more focused on creating how a sound behaves in a particular space. If you think the difference between performing in a concert hall versus a stadium versus a small black box theater, that's reverb right there. And if you think about the two differences between these two, delay is more about the repetition of the signal versus reverb is about the reaction and the shaping of the sound in a space. Distortion is another commonly used effect, and that's the idea of adding or taking away overtones of the original signal. If you look at the picture on the right, you'll see a sine wave as the original input signal, and then altered the sine wave as the output signal. So we add some more peaks and valleys into the signal. And this often results in a fuller and sometimes less focused sound. Now that we've talked about the equipment for electroacoustic music, let's talk about how to set up for a piece with live processing. First, you'll want to set up your clarinet. If you're using a pickup or a contact microphone, you'll need to attach that to the barrel and then attach the cable out of the microphone into the audio interface. Then you'll want to set up an Ableton project file. First, you'll want to make sure that you create enough tracks in Ableton to cover all the loops written in the piece. From there, you'll set up each audio track to receive audio in from the microphone. Last, you'll want to set up a triggering device to initiate the transitions between each loop. For example, you can use a MIDI keyboard, you can use a desktop keyboard, or you can use a foot pedal to transition between each loop in Ableton. And for more information on this, I have a tutorial for free available on my website, but since this is a short introduction, we'll continue on with how to practice this type of music. How you'll go about playing a live looping piece is what you'll do is you'll start recording, and you'll play that first section that is written in the music. Once you get to the end of that section, as noted on the sheet music, you'll press a trigger to create a recording of a new loop. So that, like we said in the last slide, can either be a foot pedal, a key on a keyboard, or a MIDI keyboard. While you continue on to play this second section, the first section is played through the speakers simultaneously, so you are performing alongside your previously recorded loops. This process continues over and over until there are several musical loops being performed simultaneously alongside the live performance. Live looping offers a unique performance experience for the audience, as they can hear a piece being constructed in real time. In live looping, the music is written by the composer, and the performer acts as almost an arranger, constructing that piece in real time in front of the audience. Each practice session can be used to practice this action. So set up all the equipment before you begin practicing. And when you are practicing, practice in larger sections and do complete run-throughs. The action of performing a live looping piece is a skill in itself, and it will need to be practiced. So if you do complete run-throughs, it will help you kind of work through some of the technical difficulties with the performance and with the technology. You'll want to practice each time with all the tools in place, and like we said before, if you set up an Ableton template with all the specifications needed for the piece, that will save you time each practice session. And each time you do practice this piece, it's a chance to record and analyze this style of music. With live processing and live looping especially, you'll want to analyze your dynamics, your articulation, and your phrasing from the recording. It can sometimes be difficult to make sure that you're having the correct musical arc while you're performing this style of music. As you add loops on top of loops, it will tend to get louder and louder, even if each loop is played soft. It's just stacking volume over time. So, when determining the correct dynamics, you'll want to start to grade back those dynamics from the loudest, most important loops in the piece. And then think about starting those loops softer than you might actually need to. Additionally, you can set up some parameters inside of the Ableton template to help aid in a softer playback of the loop. In addition to this, you'll want to learn the level where your microphone begins to clip. And clipping is the addition of distortion to the original signal. And we've probably all heard this when we've recorded ourselves either talking or playing on a cell phone or another device and the microphone is too close to the source. And what that is, you get kind of a fuzzy, staticky sound. If you know where your level is when you're performing and playing on your microphone, then you can know that that is your max, and you can either adjust the settings or the placement of the microphones or just not play that loud. Now I'll demonstrate live looping for clarinet. Today you'll be hearing excerpts from my electric etudes, which I wrote for my doctoral treatise. These are short etudes to help practice and study different styles of electroacoustic music. While I'm performing today, I'll also have Ableton Live up, so you can watch as those loops are constructed and recorded into the digital audio workstation in real time. A few performance notes on this etude. There are 10 loops that are built to start the piece. Now those loops range from rhythmic focused, textural focused, and melodic focused. They all work together, and they're not particularly interesting on their own, but when put together, create a unique musical experience. From there, there's a second section of music that is performed by the performer, but it's not recorded alongside those loops. The loops act as accompaniment, and this new musical material is played on top of those. Then there's a brief cadenza, and after the brief cadenza, some of the loops are brought back, and some new musical material is placed on top of that to fade out and bring the etude to a halt. Thank you for attending my lecture recital today. If you'd like to learn more information on this topic, you can visit my website, McIntyreClarinet.com, for more links, free tutorials, and resources on what we discussed today, and electroacoustic music in general. Hope you have a great day, and enjoy the rest of ClarinetFest.